Welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Harriet King. I'm a marketing specialist for the risk business at Refinitiv, and I'll be your host for today. Before we begin, I just wanted to cover a few of the housekeeping items. So just a few technical points to note. There is no dial-in number for the audio, so please could you use your device's sound and plug in your headphones to listen to the webinar. If your screen freezes, just need to refresh your browser and click the media player on your screen to enable sound and ensure that Flash is enabled on your browser. You can expand or minimize your slide and video windows by clicking on the maximize icon on the top right of the window, or by dragging down the bottom right corner of the window to expand. At the top right corner of your audience console is the Q&A box. Please submit your questions in this box, and our presenter will answer as many questions as they can during the last 5 to 10 minutes of the webcast. And finally, if you have any technical difficulty during the webcast, please click on the Help widget, which is the question mark icon on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, and this will cover troubleshooting for common technical issues. Our presenter today is Andrew Henderson, Director of EDD Proposition at Refinitiv, and you can click to view his bio on your screen. So I will turn it over to Andrew now to get the presentation underway. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks very much, Hetty. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. So today's I'm just working through the slides. Sorry. Today's session is really to go through some of the changes that are coming for the EDD business at Refinitiv. I think many of you probably are aware in October last year, the Red Flag Group was acquired by Refinitiv. So what we've been doing in the last few months is really bringing together the two businesses, and in particular the enhanced due diligence businesses, where both Red Flag Group and Refinitiv had fairly strong offerings in enhanced due diligence. So what we've tried to do is bring them both together. And today's session, I wanted to be able to take you through those the changes and also some of the backgrounds as to why we're making those changes. I'll also talk about the differences in the new report structure that's going out, and to some extent the differences from both of the legacy businesses. So if you're a client of the Red Flag Group, I'll talk about some of the changes you'll see. And equally, if you're a client of Refinitiv, some of the changes you'll see. Because they were, even though they were achieving the same aim, they were quite different in their layout and design and presentation. And so we're trying to bring them both together. Okay. So my name is Andrew Henderson, and as he mentioned, I was at the Red Flag Group for many years, so I can see in the list of the audience I know a number of you, which is great. And welcome to everyone from the legacy Refinitiv business. I'll look forward to getting to know you all in the near future. So my role in Refinitiv is really similar to what my role was at the Red Flag Group. I'm really putting the product together, and especially focusing on the EDD product. So what content goes into it, how we manage the analysis and the presentation, and also some of the systems around that. So that's my role. Okay, so as I said, what we're trying to do today is go through some of the background, because I think it's important to understand where we're coming from, but also more of the specifics of the changes that you're going to see. Sorry, while I'm getting the hang of the webinar system. Okay, so the rationale for the acquisition, I suppose, we'll cover in a reasonably short period. In both Red Flag and Refinitiv, we're working in the same space, at least the risk part of the Refinitiv business. But there was a difference in the way that we approach some of the due diligence. Refinitiv as a business is much more a data business. The vast majority of the work that Refinitiv does for its clients is in data, often in the public markets data. So whereas the Red Flag Group was much more about the analysis and private market data. So where we've brought those together, we're trying to get a more complete view from large to small for due diligence. We also doubled basically the capacity of the team. They were both fairly equivalent sized businesses, so we're able to scale. And as we get the scale, we're getting a lot more flexibility in our ability to deliver reports. As an example, where we used to have one person who spoke a particular sort of niche language, we might now have two or three. It just gives us a lot more flexibility to scale. The other area, again, coming from the Red Flag Group side, is that we had some workflow solutions. So we had Compliance Desktop and we have Supplier Integrity. And those will be the focus of what a lot of the work Refinitiv is going to put in now, because Refinitiv didn't have equivalent workflow solutions to manage compliance and to manage supply chains. So those will be the focus of the combined business. Also, in terms of the complexity of what we cover, at the lower end of complexity, there's the databases, and in the Red Flag Group world, we had the IntegraWatch database, whereas Refinitiv has WorldCheck. And again, they're similar in their the data they had in them, but WorldCheck is a far bigger and more solid product. So one of the main changes for the Red Flag Group EDD reports is that some of the base content will now be coming out of WorldCheck rather than IntegraWatch. And as a combined business, we're also looking at much more artificial intelligence. A lot of that, it's not artificial intelligence in the analysis, but it's very much in the report data gathering. So natural language processing and other techniques where we can be far quicker and more accurate at getting information in front of an analyst. But the role of the analyst still remains as they're the person who makes the final decisions about risk that we then present to our clients. And as a product sense now, we still have a number of the areas that the Red Flag Group previously had. We still have a professional services functionality that's really helping clients understand how to use our products, helping them build workflows within their business. We still have a managed services function, so helping clients actually operate some of the systems, so more an administrative function. We still have the platforms, as I said. We still have the Compliance Desktop and Supplier Integrity, and for the Refinitiv clients, those are a new offering, so hopefully your sales reps are starting to talk to you about them. We have the WorldCheck database, which is the part of the data set that is new for the Red Flag Group team. And then lastly, we have the Due Diligence Reports. And the due diligence offerings that Refinitiv had, that Red Flag Group wasn't working on, they had a slightly broader set of offerings. So they have KYC due diligence offerings for financial services, but also for corporates. So that's an area that we're going to be working on in the future. There's also applicant, which is more sort of government-related work. And there's still the pre-investment, IPO, M&A, joint venture kind of work. But what we're going to talk about today is really third-party risk. That was the offering that both Red Flag Group and Refinitiv had in common. So that was the area that we've sort of decided to tackle first, to combine the two businesses. For all the other types of work, we're still offering them, but we just haven't gone through the process of unifying the report methods and delivery. So what we're talking about today is very much the third-party risk. And in terms of what that looks like, roughly half of our combined business is our third-party risk. That's what most of our clients are looking for us to help with. In terms of who clients are using them for, traditionally that was very much sales channel, so sales intermediaries, distributors, agents, etc. Also consultants and advisors and logistics, so everyone in the sales, getting product to market kind of area. But very much more so now, we're doing a lot more supply chain work. So that could be the primary suppliers, so key suppliers that go into product. Could be secondary, so commodity kind of suppliers or office kind of suppliers. But also going through sort of more tertiary supply chain, so further down the supply chain, getting into the suppliers to the suppliers to the suppliers, etc. So those are typically the kind of use cases that our clients have and we continue to be working on. But what we're looking at now is trying to provide a bit more nuance in the analysis and delivery of those reports, if we have more information about how our clients are actually using the subject of the reports, because our analysis can be tailored to those specific use cases. Additionally, who we actually work with. Traditionally, it's been compliance functions, but more and more, so we're pushing out into other areas, so procurement for the supply chain management, business users for often the sales channels will actually be run out of the sales channel management team, or generally in the businesses themselves. So that's why, when we talk a little bit more in the next few slides about the data that we're providing, we're trying to provide data that supports a broader range of users within a business. So we're wanting to move away from just providing pure compliance information to the compliance team. The idea being, once we do a report on a third party, we want to provide information that a lot of other users within your businesses are able to utilise for their own purposes. So as I was saying before, so the rationale for what we're doing here is really to combine the two businesses and get the best out of both of them. The Red Flag Group business was much more about analysis, and the Refinitiv business is much more about the data and the content, and that's very much how we're coming together. A lot of the data sets that Refinitiv either has internally, including things like WorldCheck, we'll be embedding into our reports. But there's also other data sets within Refinitiv that weren't included previously, so we're going to be bringing those in. And also working on partnerships with external data providers, and I'll talk a bit about some of those new data sets as we go through today's session. But that's really what we're trying to focus on, is getting the best data that we can, and then applying the similar kind of analysis techniques to get a holistic view of risk. In terms of turnaround time, so how quickly we can deliver reports to clients, for many of the Refinitiv legacy clients, you'll see a reduction in the times taken to deliver reports. They'll be much closer to the times that the Red Flag Group was achieving. A lot of that's due to automation and process, so we're still bringing in a lot of that process to help with turnaround times. Because that's what we find, clients just want to make sure that they know when things are going to be delivered, and over time we'll continue to drive down those times. A lot of that's really a function of the world changing and more data being available online and immediately, with a recognition that there are some countries in the world where things still take time. So where possible, we're going to be bringing down the time. Probably the largest change that people will notice is the changes to formats, and that's again what I'll take you through today. Trying to really focus on a more graphical layout, so less words, but more information hopefully presented in a clearer way. The other big change for some of the Refinitiv clients is more focus on specific risks. So moving away from presenting a whole lot of information and really taking that information, so still doing the same amount of work and gathering the same information, but really just focusing on what that information means in terms of risks, which is similar to how the red flag group reports were previously, but taking it another step further, which is actually rating those risks. So trying to come up with an objective view of how serious those risks are for the particular subject that we're looking at. And I'll take you through a little bit of the methodology. In terms of pricing, we won't be talking too much about that today because everyone's sort of got their own pricing. But what we're trying to do is keep to the same price points and look at how much data and analysis we can put into a report at that particular point. In terms of the way we scope or package up our reports, we're really aiming to get to 4 standard report levels, and I'll take you through those 4. That's similar to certainly the red flag group 4 standard levels. At Refinitiv, there were standard levels, but within those levels there was a lot of potential complexity where some clients could choose 1 or 2 or 3 subjects and have them combined. The method that we're trying to work on now is to have a single report which covers a broader range of key principles and associated entities, with the purpose being that a single report for a standard scope can give you the breadth of analysis you need to be covering not just the subject, but people and companies around them. We're also looking, and over time, we'll be looking at sort of better ways of ordering, more online ordering. So again, some of the platforms that the red flag group had will be offered to Refinitiv legacy clients, just to simplify the ordering process. So moving away from every report being scoped and ordered individually to more framework agreements where there's an agreement in place as to what you get given a particular scope of work. It doesn't mean that when there's a case which requires specific scoping, we won't continue to do that. That's obviously the case. But where reports are being driven out of a workflow and there's some standardization in a risk assessment on the client side, we're working with clients to sort of bring together framework agreements because it's easier all around. If there's nothing specific about a particular subject, we should be applying the same kind of scope of work to that subject. And then lastly, some of the reasons for some of this work, which we'll see more into the future, is some of the better ways of delivering data to clients. So one of the ideas is an online delivery. So rather than delivering a PDF document, which has been the traditional method, delivering a link to a website where you can go and look at the same information. It's just easier to present some of that information. And it also allows us to maintain the data, so we can update data on an online website far easier than we could with documents where we'd have to do an update and send it out. It also gives us the ability to deliver that data to clients in different ways. So some of our clients are already starting to talk to us about delivering the report just as a data feed. So obviously you still have the option to look at a PDF document, but a lot of people are wanting to look at just the data, so either the overall rating for a subject or some of the individual risk ratings, which can then be fed into an ERP system or some other internal workflow system that you've got, which can drive automation or escalation or whatever your processes are. So those will become more available as we move away from delivering documents to having a system behind the documents, which can then extract that data into many forms. And similarly, ideas about subscriptions to data sets. So we often have clients who want to see data that we've done for other clients. That might be within an industry to start looking at who else we've done research on that can provide a service in a particular location. So it's some more of a sourcing discussion. So those are some of the future reasons why we're still looking at some of these changes, and we'll talk to you more as they become closer to fruition. Okay, so why third-party risks? I probably don't need to spend much time on this. I think most of you are here because you have a third-party risk compliance program of some kind. Obviously, this is a growing area. Everyone's got third parties that they work with. Each of those third parties has some kind of a risk. As I was saying before, often that was a sales channel kind of risk that people were coming to companies like us to get some more information on. But now that's far broader. And as a business, we've actually expanded the risks that we're covering. From the Red Flag Group was looking at 23 risk areas. We're now looking at 29 risk areas. And similarly, from the Refinitiv side, I think there was about 8 named risk areas that the Refinitiv team were looking at. And again, we're moving that up to 29 risk areas. But what the risk areas are there to do is really to answer a number of key questions. And that's really the focus of the new report style, is to answer these questions. So the first one is questions about identity. Identity. So who are the third parties? Who are the people or companies themselves? Are they who they say they are? And that's something that's been traditionally done in both organisations. So checking ownership, checking site visits and location information, and verification. The second main area is integrity. And again, this is something that both companies have been doing for many years. And again, from the sales channel point of view, that's looking at things like sanctions, it's looking at things like corruption, and also money laundering, and those kind of integrity risks, and answering the question of whether you should actually work with these, not whether you can, but whether you should. The next area is financial risk, and this is something that most of our clients, I'm sure you are all looking at financial risk and credit risk, but often that's being done by a separate team. So that's often being done by a credit team or a finance team. And what we're wanting to do is bring the same kind of thing about credit risk into the reports that we deliver to our clients. So not only because that saves you another step in another process, but also it gives our analysts an ability to review the risks more holistically and see how potential financial issues might bleed into other risk areas and bring them all together. And that's really one of the main reasons why we're wanting to put forward financial information. Traditionally, we'd have financial information, but that would be annual filing kind of information that a company would be putting together, which is a bit limited in its risk relevancy. It's more informational. Next, we in the Red Flag Group, we were looking at operational and quality risks. So we were looking at some more questions about whether the third party can do the job that you might be wanting them to do. Previously at Red Flag Group, that was included in some of our higher end reports, but it wasn't necessarily specifically categorised as risk. Again, it was much more informational and other points of interest we would categorise it. But now we're trying to say, yeah, these are risks to you as a business. They're not necessarily compliance risks, but if the business is looking at this third party, we will give you information that we find about quality and about operational procedures. And then we're looking at 2 new areas that for both Refinitiv and Red Flag Group we hadn't used before. The first of that is environmental social governance, so that's an ESG type of risks. At RFG, we were looking at some of the ESG risks, but we would be basically using media checking for that. So we'd be looking at whether there's been any media indications of environmental damage or anything like that. So now we're going to be working with a partner who is much more specialised in that area, so we can get more detailed information. And I'll take you through a bit about that. And then the last one is data and cyber security risks. And that's really about what damage a third party can do to you, whether that's the data that they hold on your behalf or on behalf of your clients, or just general network risk. And that's something that's obviously come to light over the last few weeks with SolarWinds, where people are starting to realise that it's not just the data that a third party can hold. If they have access to your network in some way, they can potentially do damage to you. And a lot more people are starting to think of the third party network as an extension of their own sort of internal security. So we're again starting to partner with a provider who can provide information about cyber security risk, which is outside of our traditional ability or data sets. So that's something that we're quite excited about being able to deliver for clients. Okay, and then within the risk areas, the 29 risks that I talked about, there's more detail here, and again, we can sort of give you much more information about each of those individual risks. I won't go through them today. But that's really what we're trying to focus on, is each of these risks individually will be rated where we find information. But we'll certainly be looking for information across all of those risk areas. Okay, so in more detail, and again, this is all going to be provided to you, so don't worry if we're going slightly quickly over this. The first piece of information here is what are we going to the market with in terms of the scopes of work. So we're looking at 4 scopes of work, really. Again, similar to the Red Flag Group 4 scopes of work, somewhat similar to the previous scopes of work that the Refinitiv team had, but probably more similar to the Red Flag Group. But what you will notice here is for every standard scope of work, there will be a certain amount of work that we'll do on the subject company itself, plus one or more key principles, hopefully aiming to look at who are the individuals that are most influencing the subject company, and also associated entities. So certainly at our higher level reports, we'll be looking at associated entities, so companies that are closely related to the subject company. We'll do a certain amount of work. So in terms of the work we'll do compliance checking, so that's the World Check database, previously in the Integra Watch database for Red Flag Group. We'll do media research, which again is no different from what we were doing in both English and the local language. We'll do questionnaire analysis, which is generally for our clients that are using our workflow solutions, where they've sent a set of questions to the subject company. If they send those questions as part of the due diligence request, then the analysts, when they're doing their research, will also be reviewing the questionnaires and verifying the information or highlighting discrepancies. So that's a piece of work that we'll be doing. We'll also be doing ownership checking, which is no different from what we had done in the past. The main difference from the Red Flag Group legacy reports is our ownership checking will be going beyond the immediate owners. So we'll be looking at the corporate registry for the immediate owners, but also going up to 2 to 3 levels back needed to find all of the people who have a controlling interest in that entity. And then if clients need to go further back again, we can do that. And we've got some add-on functions for that. We'll also look at reverse directorship where possible, and that's going to be part of a standard report, whereas it wasn't in the past as part of the standard report. It doesn't mean every jurisdiction has that, but where it's possible, we'll provide that. We'll be doing advanced financial checking, so that's the credit analysis that I'll show you in a second. We're doing ESG reviewing, so that's the basic review at the core level, so the second tier level, and more detailed at the higher levels, and same with cybersecurity. And then the premium level, which is the highest level, we also do the reputational business intelligence. So that's where we are. We've got the 4 levels there. That's basic, core, advanced, and premium, which map reasonably closely to the 4 levels that the Red Flag Group used to have, and with some semblance of similarities to some of the Refinitiv levels. In terms of turnaround times, again, similar to the Red Flag Group turnaround times, but actually a reduction in many cases to the Refinitiv legacy turnaround times. We've also introduced the idea of premium countries. So those are countries where our standard turnaround times aren't achievable because a lot of the work of gathering information, generally from governments, just takes more time. So that's where registries aren't online and we need to have physical presence to go and get information. So that's a change from the Refinitiv model where it was much more regional based in terms of pricing and turnaround time. So we can provide you with information about what are the countries that we have nominated as premium countries, and with a price premium as well. So it's certain countries where it's more expensive to deliver information, and it also takes longer to get that information. So we'll provide all that information to you. Okay, so if I give you a short view of the changes that we're doing. So for the basic report, that's really a very simple check with media and database searching. From the red flag group, that's actually very similar to our old bronze report. The real change there is just the data that we're using. So where we previously were using Integra Watch, we're using now WorldCheck the data. For the EDD Lite Plus, which is the Refinitiv equivalent product, again, it continues to use WorldCheck, but now we're adding an additional key principle. So it's no longer just the subject entity, it's the subject plus the key principle. And also the turnaround time is reduced. So that's now 2 days turnaround time, which is similar to the bronze report from the red flag group. So if you're a Refinitiv client ordering basic reports, which were Lite Plus, you'll see those turnaround times coming once we go live in February. The next one up is a core report, which is equivalent to the red flag group silver report. Again, main change is the WorldCheck data, but we're also sort of bringing forward some of the checking we're doing for litigation and bankruptcy. So we're doing it in the silver level rather than previously it was in the gold level. For the Refinitiv, we're expanding the scope from just the subject or subject plus one. We're doing sort of more of the litigation at an earlier stage as well. And we're also starting to bring in the new data sets, at least at a basic level for ESG and cybersecurity. So you'll see it's quite similar to the previous standard one subject plus an individual, but there is more data going into it now. And also the turnaround time has reduced. Similarly for advanced, that was very similar to our gold report in the red flag group world. Not dissimilar to the premium without business intelligence for one company and an individual. But from the Refinitiv side, we're actually moving that from 1+2 to 1+5 key principles for the database screening, and also for the media checking. In addition, we'll look at associated entities against WorldCheck. And we're doing a much more detailed analysis for ESG and cybersecurity, and also the credit reports will be at that level. And then lastly, on the standard scopes, the premium report, which is pretty much the same as the one before, the advanced report, with the addition of reputational intelligence. And that's really focusing on the one subject for reputational intelligence. And that somewhat is a change for the premium reports with business intelligence, where previously we would have done the reputational intelligence on every one of the named individuals and associated entities. That's still available if a client wants us to do that, but as a standard report, we'll be looking at focusing the reputation on the subject itself. So that's one of the changes. So that was a very quick overview of those changes. Obviously, you'll have the information for you to go into more detail. And also, we're available if you want to go into more detail about that with either products team or your sales reps can talk you through that. And we'll provide more information after the webinar. But what I wanted to go through probably more today was what you'll notice when the report is delivered to you. And that's the change of the format. And from both Refinitiv and Red Flag, there'll be changes. So I wanted to go through some of the rationale for those changes today. The main change that you'll see is that what we're trying to do is provide all the information you need to make a decision on the front page. So you don't need to go through the 20 or 30 pages of the report, unless you need to. So the model is if everything is fine and you understand from the front page what the risks are, you can make a decision based just on that information. But if you need to know more, we still provide all the same detail as necessary, the same analysis, the same references to source material if you need to go through. So we'll have the overall rating continue to be there. That's similar to the old Integra rating that Red Flag Group had. That's quite a new thing for the Refinitiv clients, is the rating, and we'll provide more information about the methodology behind it. But what it is it's a 10-point scale. So one end we're saying there's no risk that we found, the other end saying that there's significant risks, with a scale in between as to how important those risks are. But what is new for both legacy companies is the piece in the middle, which is the heat map table, which tells you not only the overall risk, but where those risks are coming from. So where are we finding those risks? And not only where they are, but how important we think those risks are. So we've got a rating methodology for the individual risks, which I'll take you through. One new feature for the Refinitiv clients is the peer benchmarking, and that's something that we've had in the Red Flag reports for a number of years now. And that gives you a sense of how this particular subject company compares to its peers in the same country and industry. And that is across the 6 main categories we're looking at: integrity, identity, etc. It just gives you a sense of how close they are to everyone else, which is very useful in cases where we're finding significant issues, because it gives you a sense of what to do next. It might be that these are as good as you could get in this particular country, so your next steps become much more mitigation actions rather than the other option, which might be to go and find a different partner who can do the same kind of work. So it gives you a sort of sense of that. And lastly, what we've added in on the bottom right is just a summary of who we are talking about within the report, which just makes it a bit clearer, and also the sources of information. So it's more a summary of where we went to get that information. So that's what the front page is. In terms of what has changed, we still have the basic information, but again, for legacy Refinitiv clients, you'll see a lot more information in that front page than there was previously. And for the legacy RFG clients, the biggest change is that you'll be seeing information about specific risks, not just the overall risk. Okay, so where we're talking about risk analysis, again, there was a risk analysis in the Red Flag Group reports, less so in the Refinitiv reports. A lot of that was presented more as information, although there was risk analysis done, but it's not presented in that way. So the new reports will have a risk assessment. Each of those individual risks will be rated where we find information on those risks. And there's a rating methodology which will be applying. And that methodology is really trying to be as objective as possible. So even though the analysts will be putting a lot of their own knowledge into the risk rating, because they know the countries, they speak the language, they know how things work, what we're trying to get out of that is an objective rating as possible. And that's because we're looking at things which are reasonably objective. So our understanding of the reliability of sources, the timing of the issues, how old some of the issues were, how important they are to the business, how severe the penalties are. That's the kind of case where a fine of $500 might be information that is relevant, but it's not necessarily a critical kind of issue. Up to the other end, where it's maybe looking at significant fines or debarments. We'll also look at the pattern of risk to see whether it's something that's being repeated or it's a one-off. And on the other side, also look at some of the mitigation or remediation actions that a client might have, or a subject might have put in place. And weighing all those things up to give the final rating. And so that's what's really being added for both sets of clients. You'll see that kind of methodology being added in. We'll also provide the basic information, so that's not really changing. Changes to layouts of how we present the information, but the core information will remain the same. And then we'll provide information about credit, as I was saying earlier. So we're working with a company called Credit Safe. They're a global provider of credit scoring. They take information from a lot of other providers, but normalise that information. So we'll be providing to you a standard credit rating, which is P2F, I think. And not only the credit rating, but also a timeline. So you'll be able to see trends in that credit rating methodology. And this kind of information will be available in our advanced premium reports. But it gives you a lot more information. Because credit, obviously, as I was saying earlier, is critical for really understanding how the business is running on the subject. Similarly, with the ESG information, we're partnering with a company called SigWatch. They provide not just what we could find in the media, but they also work a lot more with some of the non-government organisations and activists who are very much focusing on specific risk areas. And they'll tell us more information about what issues are being raised by these NGOs, but also which NGOs are most actively involved in raising those issues. So again, it's information about what some of the key media and NGOs are saying about the particular subject company. This information obviously is based on what is available. So some of the smaller companies in some parts of the world maybe won't get coverage from SigWatch. So in that case, we'll still be providing information where we can find it, but this is for those companies where they are being monitored by SigWatch. And lastly, the cyber security. We're working for the company called BitSight, and they're actually able to look at pretty much any company that has an online presence. So they're looking at around a large range of security issues, from firewalls to email security, and they address a number of those issues from the outside looking in, and they'll provide a report in the style that's in front of you about those issues. So what have they found? Where are the risks to you? Often this will be more of a signpost to say, does your security team need to get much more involved in this? It doesn't tell you everything, but it gives you a sense of the risks involved in working with a third party. And obviously those risks, as I said, some of them are internally, you're starting to become more aware of. Others are risks that are related to legal obligations, things like GDPR. The data privacy has obligations when you're transferring data outside of Europe. But there's more and more of that legislation which controls not just where data is, but the security of where it ends up. So this is where this kind of information becomes vital. In terms of what's staying the same, we're still providing information about the ownership structure. Again, that will often be deeper because the new reports will be going deeper to find ownership structures, and also the information about relationships. So again, no change to the content that we're delivering, but just the way it's presented is slightly cleaner and neater, I think. But then in terms of what's not changing, we're still doing the questionnaire analysis where needed. We're still doing reputational intelligence. One of the things that's slightly different, we'll still do the basic reputational intelligence where a client doesn't have any specific concerns. They just want to know the background, and it's important enough to get that information by actually conducting interviews. But we also have more of an investigatory researchability now as well, where if there is a specific concern, we can go and find the best people to go and ask those questions. So we're trying to split out those two different methods of doing business and reputational intelligence. We still continue to do site visits. They're not in the standard reports, but they're obviously available as an add-on if you need that to be done. We're still doing beneficial ownership, as I mentioned. That will be either within the reports themselves, or they can be added on. So for some clients, you might want to make us go to the ultimate beneficial owner, and we'll continue to do that if necessary. We'll also be doing references and verifications, so we can be looking at client-provided or subject-provided references. We can be looking at employment and educational background. What we're not doing anymore is pre-employment screening. So we used to be doing that at the Red Flag Group, but we're not going to be doing that anymore. And the reason for that is that we're not set up as an agency anymore to do that. but also that would require consent from the subject in many cases. So the verification that we'll be doing is whatever we can do without the specific consent of the data subject, except for cases where you do want us to do that, and then we'll need to get the consent, etc. So that becomes more of an investigation rather than a standard report. Okay, so in terms of what we're changing, we're really combining the business. We have a number of years of experience between us in the combined business. We run over 45,000 reports every year, and that's what we are doing today. Hopefully that will grow over time. We cover a number of languages, 60-odd languages, and again, that will be growing over time. That's our core set of languages. We obviously cover a number of other languages using contract resources where needed. We look at over 200 jurisdictions. That's pretty much every country in the world, except for those that have actual sanctions restrictions, such as North Korea's, etc. And we have a number of research centres. That's obviously just expanded. We'll be continuing to work on ensuring the quality of the reports. That's not changing. Obviously, with the new combined business, we'll be continuing and evolving the quality checking aspect. But for us as a business, it's vitally important that doesn't slip. So it's on-time delivery and it's quality of the delivery. So that continues to be one of our major focuses. In addition, we have the turnaround times are reducing. As a business, Refinitiv also has the snapshot automated delivery, so that can be under 24 hours. And so, if you haven't heard of that previously, let us know and we can talk you through that. So that's the fully automated media check and database check. It doesn't involve the analysis that we went through, and it doesn't involve some of the other research elements, and it's English only. But it is a very quick, so it kind of forms a step between our database research, or the World Check kind of database, and our basic research. So if that's of interest, please let us know. And I won't talk about the future plans, I sort of went through that, but it's really online delivery and data feeds, etc. All right, so to allow us some time for questions, just briefly, next steps. So as attachments to this webinar, hopefully you can see in your view a number of attachments. There's a brochure which describes the new report structures. You'll get a copy of this presentation as well. There's a lot more detail in My Refinitiv, which is the online portal. So again, for Red Flag Group clients, you should have been given information about how to access My Refinitiv, but if you haven't, please get in touch with your sales rep, because that has a lot of information about not only this product, but other products. So that has more detail on the report scopes. It has more details on the risk area definitions that we went through. Again, if you can't get into My Refinitiv and you want to see it, you can always talk to your sales rep and they can provide access to it. And in terms of the timing, we're aiming for all of these new reports to be live in February. So we're going through a communication planning or process this month, and then any orders that come in from February will be in this new style. So please let us know. If you want to get orders earlier, we can do that. We just want to make sure that everyone has enough time to look at the changes and be comfortable with those changes. Okay, thank you very much. And now there are some questions. I'll go through some of the questions. Okay, one second. So we do provide information about country. So for many of our clients, we will look at country risk, and that can be a standard part of the report if that's of interest. So country risk will be sort of looking at general factors about that country. We can also do sort of more business intelligence and competitor information. So that's not one of our standard scopes that we talked through today. It's available. We have the research capability. So if you were needing that, please come and talk to us about at that, and we can work out exactly what it is you need, because they tend to be very bespoke in nature as to what information you already have and what is it that you need. But in terms of general risk about a country, that can be provided as part of the standard report if that's needed. Okay, any other questions? That was all I have in the piece. In terms of who's the communication, these webinars, there's a series of 4 webinars, but they're all basically the same information. We're providing it today, this session. There's another session in the US time zone, and then we're doing the same 2 presentations next week. So if you've attended this one, you don't need to attend any others. But if you have other team members who you think you'd like to have them attend, please join them up to one of the follow-up sessions next week. But in addition, this session will be is recorded, so you'll be able to download that, and people can listen to that at their leisure. Okay, one question about Compliance Desktop and screening. So Compliance Desktop, which is the Red Flag Group product for third-party management, currently has IntegraWatch embedded in it. And there is a program underway to replace IntegraWatch with WorldCheck. So IntegraWatch is the legacy Red Flag Group client. That will be discontinued in the future. It will continue to be maintained now, but there'll be a lot more information coming out as to the timing of that. But we will be migrating it to WorldCheck. So that's the high-level answer. But as to when that's happening and the impact and the migration path, we'll be working with you on that. So and more information will be provided in due course. Okay, unless there's any other questions, thank you all. And please, if you do have other questions and that you come up with after reviewing the material, please get in touch with your sales reps, and they can feed them back to myself or also to the marketing team, and send them back to ourselves. Because that's, we want to make sure everyone's comfortable, but we think that for many of you, the changes are only positive. We're giving you some more information in the same report level. Hopefully you'll appreciate that, but please do give us any feedback of once you start getting the reports, if not before. Unless there's any other questions, thank you all for your time. Okay, Katie, I think there's a poll.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Before we conclude, I just want to ask if you could take a moment to answer the short survey that will appear on the right side of your audience console. We really value and appreciate your input there. Thank you, Andrew, and to the audience for all of your time and the interest today. So that will conclude it. Be safe, everyone, and the event is now finished.
Thanks, everyone.